So in our previous demo, we looked at using a load balancer to balance multiple websites in the same resource group. But what if you have multiple websites that are distributed globally? So let's say that you have a web app, and for the purpose of keeping the latency or the response times better, you put a copy of that web app in Europe, a copy in Australia, a copy in America, and so on. How do you ensure that a user always connects to the version of that application or the instance of the application that is going to be the most responsive? That's where something called a traffic manager profile comes in. So let's go ahead and build one. Now, before we start, I just kind of want to point out that I have, in fact, 3 web servers deployed. I've got one that's in Europe. I've got 2 that are in America. So Web 1 is in, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Web 1 and Web 2 are in America. Web 3 is in Europe. And in fact, Web 1 and 2 are actually fronted by a network load balancer. If you're wondering how that was set up, see the previous demo. And so we're going to connect to that load balancer. So I'm going to grab its IP right here, 52, 168, 67, 84. So this will connect us to the load balance copy that's in North America. So what I want to do now is ensure that users in North America always go to the one that's on the load balancer, and users in Europe always go to the instance that's on Web 3, and Web 3 is deployed in Europe. Go to the resource group, and we'll just find, and I'm going to slide this over here because this can be a little smaller for what we're doing. And Web 3, which will come in here and locate. Where'd I hide Web 3? There it is. There's Web 3. So it's actually in a separate resource group for Europe. So this one here is located in, and we'll take a look at the details on it. This one is located in Europe. There we go. So this one is in West Europe. So let's go ahead and deploy a traffic manager profile. Find it in the marketplace, click create. Creation process, very simple. It needs a DNS name. It should be worth pointing out, by the way, that with any of the websites, you can use the IP address, but to use a traffic manager profile, you got to have a DNS name published. So it's got to be a resolvable DNS name. Now, what I've done is I've used the internal Azure DNS names, the ones Azure gives me automatically. So this is going to be CJH Web App 1, and we'll see if that's available. It is. .trafficmanager.net, and we now choose our routing method. And there's a couple of different options that you can put in place. You can do what's called priority routing. You can do geographic routing, which is the method that we're going to use. Geographic routing takes based on the geographic location of the IP address. You can also use performance. Performance will take into consideration performance data that Traffic Manager collects over time to determine which areas actually provide the best performance. So we're going to do geographic. We'll do a new resource group. It's called a Traffic Manager resource group. East-US, click create. It's very simple to create. So this is now in process. It's going to be deployed pretty quick. You can see a lot of these leftover virtual machines from other things I've been doing. Here's the Traffic Manager profile. And so we're going to go to our configuration. And so here we can choose our geographic method, the time to live for DNS records that it publishes, and then how it monitors endpoints. Again, this will act as kind of a geo load balancer. If a particular region goes offline, much like with a load balancer, we have a probe. This will identify that a given region's gone offline and no longer included in any of the routing profiles. So we have the probing interval, which is 30. Number of tolerated failures, probe timeout, and these are all measured in seconds. Now finally, we're going to put in our endpoints, and these are the actual endpoints that we can choose between. And so I've got a couple of options that I can choose. I can choose an Azure endpoint, an external endpoint, which is any DNS name. So I don't need to host my stuff on Azure to use Traffic Manager. I can have my, any resource on any other cloud provider, something I host in my own data centers, and use Traffic Manager to govern who gets access to what instance based on data like geographical data. We're going to choose Azure endpoints. Call this one web servers. And the endpoint type is going to be a public IP list. And it's going to choose IPs that have a DNS name associated with them. So type Azure name. This is going to be Web3. And this is going to be in Europe. And I can choose the region that it's in if I want. And click OK. Let's add our other two. This is the network load balancer in North America. So choose the public IP of the network load balancer, which is this guy right here. And this is going to be in North America. And click OK. And so now we've got the two entries that are placed in here. And so what this enables me to do is I can now go navigate to the URL that is provided for my Traffic Manager. So this is this URL right here. So we're going to copy this one. And we're just going to navigate to it. And you'll notice it sends me to Web 1. Now the reason it sends me to Web 1 is because it identified that the VM I'm navigating from, so this desktop I'm on right here is actually in North America. I chose geographic based routing, so sent me to the endpoint that is in the same geographic region. I have a VM that I've spun up in a Europe Azure data center just to prove the other point, that what happens when I'm actually in Europe. So we're going to go connect to this VM. So this is the one that's running in Europe. We'll let this load up here. Click connect. You can see this is in West Europe. Go ahead and connect to it. And actually, let me connect to it a little bit differently. I've set my default resolution for my terminal server connections a little bit smaller so we can see what's on the screen. So we're going to log on this way and open up a browser. So this is connecting to this VM that's running in the West Europe data center. And if everything works correctly, it should connect me to Web3, which is the web server running in Europe. But again, I'm going to connect to this same Traffic Manager address. So we'll just fire up Internet Explorer. Let's accept the defaults. And let's put in this URL. And you'll notice that it takes me to Web3 in Europe. So that's a look at how you set up and configure a Traffic Manager profile. So again, the bigger scenario is we've got multiple web servers. Each web server is fronted by a network load balancer. And we can now use a Traffic Manager profile to provide geographic or performance-based routing across different instances of that web application in different regions of the world.